It was a natural reaction when you saw a blood-splattered little creature. Choi Han's gaze on the torturer turned savage. Choi Han. That's why Kale called him. Choi Han reported while still staring at the torturer. As your request, I took all the soldiers down and made them unable to fight anymore. Good job. Kale praised him, then headed towards that palm-sized flat wall and told Choi Han to punch that spot. Use all my strength? Choi Han asked confusedly. Did he plan to destroy this whole cave? So Kale made a specific request. Just making it sink about 10 centimeters would be enough. So you mean handle it with care? Yes. Handle it with care? Something that Kale couldn't do, but Choi Han considered it is. Handle with care. Kale stood back from Choi Han. He understood that Kale's action was meant to urge him to hurry, and immediately punched the wall. The cat sisters showed their admiration. Kale carried the baby dragon in his arms. A space just enough for an adult to slip through opened up on the wall. Choi Han immediately picked up the torch. Let's go! Hearing Kale say that, the two cats climbed onto Choi Han's back. Choi Han took the lead and jumped into the tunnel. Kale followed right after him. When they got outside, the baby dragon looked around bewilderedly. Kale gently placed it on the ground. The dragon didn't say a word but only wheezed. But its eyes that seemed to pierce through Kale were still brutal. That look was contrary to the one it should have had for its savior, only filled with hatred for the deceitful humanity and wary of other violence that might befall it. This attitude must have been caused by being imprisoned by Vinyan for 4 years. Stop staring, Kale casually said to the baby dragon. Indeed, Kale liked this dragon. Kim Roxu, an orphan that accepted to grow up under the arrangement of fate. He has abandoned the place called home and also has no strength to face the world, but this dragon is completely different. Hey. After confirming that the dragon was glaring at him, Kale took out a large pair of scissors from his magic bag. This was one of the 2 items that Kale had to borrow in Billow's name. Choi Han looked at the scissors with panicked eyes. And the cat sisters? They stayed away from Kale and hid behind Choi Han. Seeing that reaction, Kale clicked his tongue and approached the dragon. He grabbed it by the neck. The blade was directed towards the neck. The sound of something was cut came out. Tisk tisk, small sparks of fire were released when the necklace was cut. He held it in his hand. What are you looking at? Kale bluntly asked the dragon that opened its eyes and continued to look at him. The current on the necklace was still there, so he took off one of his gloves and passed it to Choi Han. He took the glove, put it on, and received the necklace from Kale's hand. Kale took out the healing potion from his pocket. It's a premium healing potion. This also took a lot of money. Kale said, Do you know how much I spend on you? The baby dragon once again heard what it used to hear in the cell every time it refused to listen, the words it had always heard from the moment it was born. But Kale opened its mouth and poured the potion into it. Fortunately, the dragon did not protest, but just accepted and drank. So get well soon, you stupid brat. A few minutes later, the source of all power, mana, which was nothing more than a dragon's heart, began to work. All the wounds on its body disappeared, and a wave created by the power of mana surrounded and enveloped it like a wind. Kale took a step closer to the baby dragon and asked, What would you like to do? Seeing the dragon shut its mouth tightly without answering, Kale continued, You are a wise and proud dragon. I know that you can speak human language, so answer my question. Kale asked once more time. If you were free, what would you like to do? The baby dragon spoke. Indeed, dragons can speak human language. Dragons are much smarter than humans. There is no way it can't speak human language after 4 years in captivity. I will live. I want to be free. I don't want to be tamed. That was exactly what Kale wanted. He freed the baby dragon, and he had no intention of keeping it either. The baby dragon didn't believe Kale. It screamed, Liar! Humans can only lie! Rage appeared in its eyes. That rage wasn't towards Kale. The arrogance that is the instinct of the dragon in it had just emerged. It is rage at the time when its instincts are trampled. K-Uyn admitted that he was a very good liar, but this time he didn't. He really wanted it to live as it wanted, and he also hoped for it to live freely. Then he turned and left. The job was done. Rescued the baby dragon, kept the village safe, and retaliated against Venian. Choi-han also understood what freedom is thanks to that dragon. Above all, K-Uyn didn't want to be responsible for that dragon, so it was fine. A happy ending for K-Uyn. The dragon raised its head to look at their back, and in its mouth kept saying, "I hate human evil," but it looks like it's already touched. On the way home, the Wercat sisters, who were still in the form of cats, chatted happily, because they thought that the dragon would follow K-Uyn, so they would have another brother. K-Uyn didn't believe what they said. You thought it was bullshit. Dragons are free species, so they cannot be controlled by humans. On the other hand, that dragon was tortured by humans, so it hates humans even more, K-Uyn said. So it was impossible for it to follow him. After hearing K-Uyn say that, the cats became sad, so they wouldn't have another brother. K-Uyn ordered them to go get the orb. He patted Choi-han's shoulder. It's been hard for you. Today is the first time Choi-han saved something. Although he had fought with mountain bandits before, it was an act of protection. Of course, instead of saving the villagers like in the novel, he saved the dragon he was supposed to kill. But the important thing to Choi-han is helping. K-Uyn. Yes. Choi-han was silent for a while after calling, then spoke. If following you was the way the dragon wanted to live, what would you do? I said that won't happen. Just if that happened, if... K-Uyn thought it over carefully, and then gently replied, I don't think about the past or the things that won't happen. Even so, K-Uyn felt cold for some reason, and he turned his head to look behind him. Luckily, he didn't see the dragon anymore. K-Uyn calmed down and solved all his problems, then went back to his room and slept. Because of that, without K-Uyn knowing it, for the first time, the baby dragon used stealth magic to look at him sleeping soundly. It hugged the potion bottle that K-Uyn left behind, showed a happy smile. The next day, Choi-han came to find K-Uyn early in the morning. After drinking the glass of cold water that Ron had given him in one gulp, K-Uyn still felt that his stomach wasn't okay. He must have been so nervous last night that he didn't feel anything. Now that everything was over, his stomach was starting to hurt because of the alcohol he drank yesterday. Moreover, he couldn't sleep last night because of the feeling that someone was staring at him. He yawned while listening to Choi-han report the situation. After taking K-Uyn back to the inn, Choi-han immediately erased all the traces they left behind and created other tracks in the west before returning.